Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So in this video we are going to be discussing the Weapon Diversity Beta, and this was just released yesterday. So they actually released the beta, so you can access it by clicking this link. I have already tested it out and I will be showing you what I have tested out so far later in the video. But just looking at this, it is a pretty interesting update that they are considering. So I'll just read it here. RuneScape has a huge variety of weapons across every combat skill, from swords and axes to staves to swamp lizards. But isn't it kind of weird that all of these weapons essentially behave the same? So what they are going to be doing is fixing this and making every weapon feel different, which is pretty interesting, and I think personally will be pretty exciting for the game. So I will be putting this link so you can actually join the beta in the description down below. Definitely check it out because it is pretty interesting. It will be up for a whole month. But looking at what you should expect, I'll go look at each weapon and what the effect is going to be. So starting with the dagger, the effect breakdown is that when you hit something, there is a chance for your dagger to auto attack, so do some extra auto damage. So that would mean while you are attacking, you'll have this 5% chance to just instantly get another hit in, but it wouldn't be an ability hit, it would just be a regular auto damage hit. So this would just boost your DPS using daggers by a little bit. Right now the chance is only 5%, so it is pretty low, and auto attacks aren't really that effective, but it is a pretty neat, nice addition to daggers. Now spears is where it gets pretty interesting. So spears, it's a simple effect. All bleed damage is now 50% longer. So this, I can see this really important for any kind of boss, because you always do bleeds. I mean, for most bosses, except for Nex on that blood phase. So I could see you bringing a spear to many bosses just so you can use it. You'll switch to the spear, do a bleed, and then switch back. I can see that for sure. It is pretty interesting ability. And then looking at the scimitar. So the scimitar effect is pretty complicated, I thought, when I first read it. But essentially what it is it's going to be like you make someone bleed. So that is essentially what it is. So you'll have this 10% chance, I guess, that you'll get your target to bleed, and then 5% of the damage is applied. So if you have a deal of 1000 damage, then you will be dealing 100 damage over 12 cycles, so 25 damage each cycle. That part is a little bit confusing if you do read it, but essentially it is just making your target bleed, which is pretty interesting. So, and now we will look at the two-hand sword. And I really like this ability. It is a lot like the Ceradomian God Sword special ability. So 5% of your critical hits will be applied immediately as an instant heal. So I can see this being used for Slayer tasks or any kind of prolonged combat, which is usually Slayer. So I think this is a pretty nice update to two-hand swords if they do it. And I do like this ability. And looking at maces. Now maces seem a little bit overpowered, to be honest. So while wielding a mace, 200% of your entire equipped prayer bonus is added to your strength bonus. And then while dual wielding maces, this effect would stack up to 300% of your prayer bonus. So this is pretty insane. You can get pretty high prayer bonus, and getting 3 times that onto your strength bonus should lead to some pretty high DPS. So that is a pretty interesting ability. I'm not sure if they will make maces a little weaker, but it is pretty interesting. So now looking at mauls. Mauls are pretty much never used right now, and the effect, I mean, I think it's interesting, but I don't think it is super broken or anything. So you will get plus 5 tiers in damage, but you also go minus 5 tiers in accuracy, so it is pretty useful. I mean, damage is probably more important than a little bit more accuracy, so that is pretty interesting. Now looking at range, we have short bows, and this is a pretty interesting update. So short bows will do more damage the closer you are to a target, which makes sense. It is a short bow, so this would be a pretty cool effect that they could add to the short bow. And now the shield bow. The shield bow is pretty interesting as well. So it's going to make defense abilities cost 20% less adrenaline to use, meaning that it'll cost 40% for defense thresholds and 80% for the defense ultimate abilities. And then you have the one-hand crossbow. So this 2% chance whilst using a basic ability to use the same basic ability at the same time. So it is pretty interesting. I mean, 2% chance, it won't happen that often, but it would boost your DPS just a little bit. And then the two-hand crossbows, after standing still for at least 3 seconds, gain a 5% accuracy buff, which doesn't have a timer. If you move, this buff now has a 5-second duration. If you stand still for at least 3 seconds, the buff is refreshed. So I do like this. Accuracy is pretty important on many bosses, so this is a nice little boost to two-hand crossbows. And then there's throwing knives, minus 5 levels in weapon damage and accuracy, but the global cooldown is now only 1.2 seconds rather than 1.8. So that is fairly interesting. Throwing axes, you currently gain 2% adrenaline with an auto attack with your main hand weapon and 1% with an offhand weapon. While throwing axes, this should be increased to 4% and 2%. And so yeah, I mean, throwing knives, throwing axes, they aren't really that exciting. Now magic is pretty exciting. So we have the air spells. So when you hit with a magic air spell, you'll gain a stack which increases your total armor by 1%, and this can stack up to 10% and last for 10 seconds. So that is pretty interesting. It will kind of boost your defense just a little bit while using air spells. And then there's fire spells. So I kind of found this effect a little bit confusing, but here it goes. 5% chance whilst hitting with anything the second combust acts like the magic ability combust, but can be applied at the same time as a player's combust. So I know it is a little bit confusing. So pretty much it should just give you an extra combust, which will deal some more bleed damage, essentially. And then there's the water spells. This is really interesting. I did test this out. So when using a water spell as your selected spell, when you deliver the finishing blow, a water global should spawn where the target died, and if you walk on it, you will gain 2% health for your max health. So you instantly be healed for 2% of your max health, which is pretty nice. And then earth spells is more strategic, situational. So whilst your target is stunned or bound, you will deal 20% more damage to them. So yeah, that is interesting as well. And I did test most of these out. I tested the fire and the water. I think those will be used the most. So now looking at what this update would actually do for RuneScape 3, it is fairly hard to say. I mean, it is a pretty big update. It's a pretty big change to the game, and that makes it pretty exciting. So, I mean, someone like me, I'd be excited to try that out and play with it. But it also makes the game a little bit more complicated, and it is fairly complicated just the way it is with certain bosses. I mean, me personally, I am not a expert at PVM. The best boss that I kill is probably Araxor, and you know, that isn't too complicated, but I think adding abilities like this, you'd have to bring a bunch of switches and all this to make it the most efficient. And for me, I don't really like that. I don't care about being the most efficient or getting the most DPS. I really just enjoy killing the boss, so I mean for me I really don't care too much because I wouldn't explore into the actual best possible ways to kill the boss, but a lot of other people would, and I would think some might even find this annoying. Some might find this great as well, though. I mean, it adds a little bit more complexity to the bosses. But overall, I think this is a really good update for the game. And if you really do look at it, you're really losing nothing. I mean, every weapon is gaining a perk, gaining a really useful effect. So you could just do it the way you always have, and it will work just a little bit better because whatever weapon you are using is a little bit better with that effect. So I think overall this is a pretty good update that they should implement, and they are testing it right now. They are looking for a lot of feedback, so I would really like to see what you guys think in the comments down below. I would definitely advise all of you to go check out the beta, try it for yourself, because it is a lot easier to understand and actually see if you do try it out yourself. It is pretty awesome too. You can try out a bunch of tier 92 weapons. You can go anywhere and just kill whatever with these pretty cool weapons. I'm not really sure how the beta is working, like if it counts if you die or whatnot. So you could try it out on a few bosses if you'd like. Just try whatever, get a good feel for it, and definitely provide some pretty good feedback because it is really up to the community for this update, I would think. And if most people do like it, I would say they would implement it. And me personally, I think it is a pretty good update that could update combat by quite a bit. And as they said in the beginning, every weapon is essentially the same, and it is kind of weird. So it would be pretty cool if they do add this and make every weapon unique. Anyway guys, that is it for this video. If you guys do want to check out the beta, go to the RuneScape website in the news and then go to this weapon diversity update, and the link should be there. I will also be putting the link in the description down below, but just in case it doesn't work, go to the RuneScape website. Anyway guys, I really hope you did enjoy this video and you found it informative. I would definitely suggest each and every one of you to try out this update and definitely provide feedback, because this update is pretty cool and it really changes a lot. So Jagex really does need your support as to whether they should implement this update or not. Anyway guys, I will see you in the next one. Peace.